Hello, peeps. Welcome to the Culture and People Cast. Today we have Luis with us. In a few sentences, Luis, would you please tell us who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Good to be here. I'm Luis Gonzáles out of Laguna Beach, California. I'm a master facilitator, trainer, and speaker with Fierce Conversations. Fierce. We're an award-winning leadership and development company. Our training methodologies help improve conversations in the workplace. Basically, I help people stop having pointless conversations that don't help our results. And I help people have impactful, meaningful, authentic, candid conversations that improve our results while enriching our relationships. I love what I do.
I love it. And you know, as fun as silly names or made up names can be for organizations, I love how direct the organization name is. It's like, look, we're talking about fierce conversations here. So you have seen a lot, dealt with a lot in this world of workplace culture and people with what you do. Tell me, what's your favorite part of this work?
I guess for me, I'm born, and this sounds so cliche to say it, but I've been born like wanting to help others. And I think a lot of us are like that. We like helping other people. We get a kick out of, or rise out of, or some joy out of helping others. And so what I love about what I do is influencing people in a positive way. The best thing about that is to be able to help or serve. So I'm fulfilled whenever I can help people improve the way they have conversations, just like I mentioned a moment ago, especially nowadays, even in the workplace, around topics such as empathy, radical candor, social and racial equality, human rights, rights for sexual minorities, non-heteronormative people, the environment, Black Lives Matter, et cetera, et cetera. Not to mention the political discourse that was bubbling up in the public arena over the last year or so. How do we have those kinds of conversations that are touchy, that are tricky, in ways that even if we don't agree, we can improve our understanding and learn more about how other people see things and hopefully enrich our relationships in the meantime.
Yeah. And we could do a whole hour-long episode on, I'm so curious to see, as we push into these sort of taboo topics that people really haven't talked about at work before. Will it be a place that can sort of come together, or will it end up, sort of your camp and your camp, right? The people who feel this way versus the people who feel that way. I did my last guest on my long form podcast before I took a pause was one of my mentors, Alonzo Kelly. And the title of that episode was talking about race and other taboo topics at work, because we have to start. And his explanation, Luis, was as a Black man in the people and culture space, he feels like we should have these conversations all the time, right? Like, maybe we leave work and the guy sitting next to us who we aren't sure how he feels, okay, we work together, but when we walk out to the parking lot, we see the Confederate flag on his car, and how does that make Alonzo feel? So not talking about it at work is ignoring this large part of who we are.
Yes, I would agree. And when we ignore it, it eventually erodes the trust, that erodes the relationship. And that has business implications, like $, put them on a spreadsheet implications. I mean, starting with, if people don't trust one another in the workplace, are they going to collaborate? Are they going to go the extra mile? Are they going to support one another, et cetera, et cetera? So these have business implications as well, these conversations, either having them or not having them.
Agreed. And I think people hear us and think we're talking about touchy-feely and letting people be human, which I love humanity's side, but I want humanity so that we can get even better business results, right?
Absolutely. And to me, there's no separation, because at the same time, we have our business goals. A lot of us are business people, business oriented, entrepreneurs, perhaps some of your listeners, et cetera. But guess what? Last I checked, we're all human beings.
Yeah.
And science has proven, 2 Nobel Prizes were won, that proved we human beings are emotionally driven first, rationally second.
Yeah.
So you can't, in my mind, you can't really separate them. Yes, there's the business aspect and the numbers and, everything like that. But then there's the human side. And so you can call it touchy-feely, but to me, it's just what it is. We're human beings.
Yeah. And because we're in such I'll call it challenging time, we call it a time of opportunity too, but social and racial injustice happening, the political landscape, we've got COVID-19 happening. Overall, engagement at work is affected, right? What are your thoughts about engagement in the workplace at this time?
Well, some questions come to my mind first. I have some thoughts, but they come up as questions first. Those who say, for example, that engaging their employees is a challenge. Well, how are they engaging? How are they trying to engage? Are they relying on email? Are they relying on Slack or Zoom chats or texts? When they do meet virtually, are they turning on their cameras? And I'm saying virtually because I'm assuming, I don't generally like to assume, but probably most of us are in virtual realities right now.
Yes.
So are they turning on their cameras? Are there meetings? Are there conversations with their people, the people who report to them? Are they always agenda-based? Or are they checking in with their employees just to check in, do a temperature check? How are you? What's keeping you up at night? How can I support you? What is it that I don't know that you maybe want to tell me? And offer support as well. So just as important, I also ask, these are rhetorical questions I'm asking myself coming from your question, how often are they communicating? Because our most valuable currency, and I say this in fierce trainings all the time, and I believe it wholeheartedly, our most valuable currency is not our money, not how smart we are, how charismatic we are, self-sufficient, great leaders, all of that. Our most valuable currency is relationship. And why do I say that? Because what I just mentioned a few minutes ago, 2 Nobel Prizes were given to the researchers who proved that at the core, we human beings value relationships. Now, I mentioned the 2 experts that won the Nobel Prizes, but I'm going to distill it down to this. If we lower the standards about how often we talk, or if we lower the standards about what we talk about, and most importantly, if we lower the standards about the degree, or lower the standards of the degree of authenticity that we bring, candor that we bring to those conversations, our relationships suffer. So if engaging with your employees is a challenge, I suggest start looking at number one, look at the frequency and the quality of your conversations. The frequency isn't just enough.
No.
There's got to be quality. And we human beings are great at sniffing out insincerity. So when you check in with your employees, hopefully frequently, be sincere about it. Genuinely, and I can't train anyone how to be genuine, genuinely care and ask, how are things going? And check in, be authentic. Engagement will then become natural and organic, in my experience, as a result of that. Again, paying attention to the frequency and the quality of your conversations with the people who report to you.
That's awesome.
Go ahead, please. I would finish it off that if I withhold what I'm really thinking, if I'm not as candid, if I'm not showing vulnerability, if I'm not modeling accountability, or any of those things, the people around me, the people who report to me, will probably do the same thing. And that's going to affect our results and our engagement, and thus our results.
Yes, completely. So thinking about that, maybe formal and informal meeting, how are we meeting and how often are we meeting? Let's get very tactical for people out there. And maybe we talk directly to the people leaders, because I do believe employees can initiate, but there's some responsibility of the leaders. So what are your recommendations for best practices? If a leader's out there saying like, okay, I'm going to start this the week after the holiday, what should I do?
In terms of engagement, is that what you're speaking
like
of?
Those connection points?
You
know, for example, I say you should meet weekly if you can, one-on-one, right? Formally weekly, to talk about what's really, really happening with that employee in the projects. What is your recommendation for formal and informal communication or touch base?
Thanks for that question. We're currently working on that on our own at Fierce. And this is also what I train as well. So we've got to have the standard agenda-based meetings, strategy meetings, planning meetings, whatever kind of meetings we need that are agenda-based, they last a certain amount of time, and we stick to that time and make sure we cover everything. That has to be done. But in addition to that, this is what I recommend, especially in our current situation we find ourselves in. Perhaps on a Friday afternoon, end of the week, we set aside 30 minutes as a team to hang out, have a glass of wine or whatever flips your lid, like iced tea, and just casually check in, no agenda. Just like we would probably do in the coffee rooms or in the breaks, during the breaks, or when we go out to lunch with one another, because that's really missing. And for the leaders who are listening to your show now, I've found in my experience that that is when I get a lot of information that I didn't know or that I wasn't aware of, or the mood, a temperature check, a reality check in these informal conversations, because chances are they won't come out in the agenda-based, bullet-pointed conversations that are also just as necessary. So I recommend a balance. Definitely, we got to have those agenda-based meetings where there's some outcomes and who's on first and deliverables and all that. And we've got to make the time. Now, I just said the word time. I have had leaders say, yes, Luis, sounds great, but we're all so busy, even busier now. We just don't have the time. And I say, well, that's an investment. That investment of 30 minutes a week may hurt, may pinch you. You may have to, slice and dice on other projects or something that you're going to have to remove 30 minutes from, but that investment will pay off down the line in terms of engagement.
And what leaders don't understand is they are spending the time with that person, but they're spending it on the performance management and the cleanup instead of on the front end, where you could have such a more valuable relationship with them and get so much better work out of them. So Luis, is there a key phrase, and it is an art and it's not like a one and done, but is there a key phrase that a leader can use that might open the floor for more fierce conversations?
A key phrase that I use, I start out all of my workshops with when I introduce fierce conversations, and this lands for quite a few people. I hope it lands for you. It's basically this: our careers, our companies, our relationships, heck, our lives, either succeed or fail. Gradually, then suddenly, one conversation at a time. So that's a mouthful. But if we break it down, it boils down to this: highly effective people like us track the trends of our lives. And during that gradual part, we're in tune and attentive, and we know if we're headed in the right direction or not. And when we're not headed in the right direction to meet our goals, whatever we say those goals are, we step back and we're intentional about who we need to have conversations with to get us there. Think of any personal relationship you have tried to get. Think of any job you've applied for, any goal that you've set for yourself and actually achieved that goal. If you look back, it was probably a series of conversations, dots that were connected. So gradually, then suddenly, our careers, our companies, our relationships, and our lives either succeed or fail, and it happens one conversation at a time. So how are we showing up to our conversations? Authentically, candidly, even though sometimes that might be difficult? Or are we keeping them surface? Or are we avoiding the conversation? Even worse, there's another hour-long podcast we could have on the results and the dangers of avoiding conversations we don't want to have.
Yeah, I think a lot of leaders are maybe tending to approach this time as like a little Pollyanna, right? Like, well, I don't want to bring them down. I don't want to share my problems. I don't want to be negative Nancy about it. But if you're withholding information, and in a time where so much is uncertain, if you're over there acting like, oh, we have everything figured out, don't worry, that's not authentic. That's not fierce. No. That's not true.
That's not true leadership as well. The leader, a good leader, is able to deliver the difficult message without the load, without the heavy load. Don't want to get into politics right now, but what you just described, we've seen in terms of the COVID response in the United States since March. That Pollyannic view that got us nowhere. A good leader will step in and say, here are the facts. Here's what we're dealing with. Here's what we need to do, et cetera, and move on from there. But as I mentioned, they are able to deliver the message without the load. That's the mark of a true leader from my perspective.
Oh, I love that. Deliver the message without the heavy load. Perfect advice. So, Luis, let's give a quick shout out. Who else is doing some amazing work in the world of culture and people that may even be a guest on the show?
I want to say this, and please take this the right way. I have all respect and look up to my mentor, Susan Scott. She's the founder of my company, and she is the author of the book, Fierce Conversations. When I read that book 6 years ago, it changed the trajectory of my life and my career and my relationships. The beauty of what I found anyway in the book, Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott, is what we're talking about right now, fierce conversations. Yes, they work in the business world to help us improve our results and achieve our goals, but they work in our personal lives as well. So it's 24/7. I respect Susan Scott a lot. If you have the opportunity to have her on the show and hear it from her, I think you will not regret it. So I'm honored to share that. Susan Scott, founder of Fierce Conversations and author of the book Fierce Conversations.
Oh, that's great. And regardless, Luis, whether she's a guest or not, we will link her LinkedIn profile in the comments of this so that people can go and follow her on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
And how about some favorite resources of yours that have helped you evolve your thinking in terms of culture and people?
Favorite resources of mine that have helped me evolve in terms of culture and people. Number one is I'm a culture guy. So I've lived around the world. I have experienced many cultures and I come from a bicultural background. So communication and effective communication, where culture comes into that and plays a role in that, is what I'm really interested in. So another one of my mentors is Dr. Ernest Gundling, Gundling, runs a company called Aperian, Aperian, Aperian Global. Check out their website on communication strategies with the cultural component added into it. In other words, certain cultures have certain ways, generally speaking, that they communicate. And if you're unaware of that, everyone's speaking English, but if you're unaware of that, it creates roadblocks and breakdowns in the communication that affect the business. And so that's a real keen interest of mine. And he was also my professor in grad school and my mentor as well. So that's another place I'd like to direct your listeners to if they're interested in that.
Love it, Luis. And we will connect to the Appearing Global around that communication strategy as a resource for everybody. And I just want to thank you first for being a guest, but really more than that, for all you're doing for people and culture in the world of work. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes. Peace and progress, everybody.